This is Professional Journeys, Educational Interpreter Permit Certification and Beyond. We're going to be recording this session. Please leave your mics muted and your cameras turned off for us. If you have questions, you can type them in the chat box and we will get them to the presenter at the end. Okay. If only the ID, oh man, I can't even do the letters today, IDEIC host will be able to see your questions. But I will make sure that Laura gets them at the end, or Susie.
Okay, perfect.
In order to get RID IIC CEUs, you'll be in a beginning and ending code for the session. The beginning code for this session is training. All right. And we will turn this over to Susie to get started. And Laura, we will get in contact with you and see if we can get your sound fixed.
All right. So good morning. My name is Susie Langston. I'm with the Indiana Department of Education in the licensing office. I have worked for the Department of Education for over 25 years and have worked with the educational interpreters since you all came from the Family and Social Services Department. I will be discussing a few things today, hopefully that will answer all of your questions, and maybe we'll have some that we can't answer. I'll have to get back with you if that happens to be the case. So educational interpreter permits, I don't know if I can move this. There we go. Okay. Educational interpreter permits fall, the rules for that are, you can find under 511 Indiana Administrative Code 18. And is there any way, can I ask you real quick, Lisa, is there any way to get rid of this screen? There we go. Let's do that. Got it. Okay. I wasn't able to see my entire screen, so my apologies for that. So the rules for Indiana educational interpreters are found under Indiana Administrative Code 511-18. And an interpreter must hold an educational interpreter permit if they are hired to work with a deaf or hard of hearing student by a school corporation, an interlocal agreement, a special ed cooperative, a cooperating school corporation for a vocational education organized under that Indiana code, an accredited non-public school, or a non-accredited non-public school. This rule does not apply for someone who is actually a teacher of the deaf and hard of hearing. All right, why isn't it moving over? Try again. Okay. There are two websites that are important for all of you. The first one being the Department of Education website, where you can go and find information about how to apply. There will be step-by-step instructions on our webpage. There's information about the governor's executive orders concerning COVID-19. The other website is the license portal. We call it LVIS, LVIS, for License Verification and Information Systems. LVIS is where you'll go to enter your professional growth plan for educational interpreter points. You'll be able to complete, submit, and pay for applications. This is a screenshot of both of those sites. The one on the left is the Department of Education website. That website again has instructions on how to apply, the information on what's needed to renew or apply for an original, as well as the top box on that left side is information about the governor's executive orders concerning COVID-19 and licensure. Those rules do apply to educational interpreters as well as teachers, administrators, and school services personnel. The screenshot that's on the right-hand side is LVIS, the licensing portal. This is what LVIS looks like when you log in right now. Unfortunately, there's been some changes made, so when you log into LVIS, you can't click on the right-hand side, the Educational Interpreter Professional Growth Plan. you have to first click the green box for I am in Indiana, and that will take you to the professional growth plan links and all the other links that are pertinent. I'm going to go ahead and discuss this, and I know there'll probably be questions at the end. And so we'll address this again. Educational interpreter permits in COVID-19. Now let me see if I can move her out of the way. All right. Per Governor Holcomb's Executive Order 20-16, a license or permit with an expiration date from March 1st of 2020 to August 31st of 2020 is considered valid until September 1st of 2020. This includes licenses of employed educational interpreters that expired during the 2019-2020 school year prior to March 1st that were considered valid through the duration of the school year under State Board Rule 511, Indiana Administrative Code 18-1-8. So permit holders that are impacted by this executive order, by this extension, whose first day of school where they are employed is on or before September 1st of 2020, also fall under the State Board of Education rule, and their permit will also be considered valid through the duration of the 2020-2021 school year. So what that means is, if you held a license as an educational interpreter during the 2019-2020 school year, and it expired during that year, and you were employed, your license was considered valid through the entire school year. That's what that administrative code ruling allows. That's a State Board of Education rule, and it allows your license, if it's valid on the first day of school, then it's considered valid through the entire school year. So the first portion of that allows the extension until September 1, most schools in Indiana, if not all of them, start prior to September 1st. So if your license is valid and you are working as an educational interpreter in an Indiana school prior to September 1st, then your license is considered valid through the 2021 school year. So that also applies to teachers, administrators, and school services personnel. So next summer, our office is going to be extremely busy, but this will allow you to obtain professional growth plan points for educational interpreter professional growth plan points to be able to renew your license, because it's going to be valid through the 2021 school year. I would suggest, if you can get all of your PGP points entered and approved now, and then apply for that license prior to next summer, it would probably be easiest for everyone. You don't have to, it's just a suggestion. I want to go on to information and instructions about applying and the requirements. So back on our website, you'll find the options that you have to either renew your license or your educational interpreter permit, along with step-by-step instructions. And if you are first obtaining your educational interpreter permit, you have two options. So one option, if you're applying for the very first time, you'll click I want to be in Indiana. If you're renewing your license and you want information and step-by-step instructions, again, on our website, you'll go and you'll click I am in Indiana. Underneath it says educational interpreter. For original educational interpreter permits, applicants must have a high school diploma, and then they either have to pass the EI written test and have a score of 3.5 or higher, on the EIPA skill test, or they must have the RID certification. If you're an educational interpreter and wish to find information about renewing your educational interpreter permit, you'll go to our website. You'll click I am an Indiana teacher, administrator, educational interpreter. Click renew a license, and then click Indiana educational interpreter. Again, to renew the educational interpreter permit, applicants must have 36 PGPEI points. 18 of those points must be in skill development. The other 18 can be distributed in any one of the other areas listed. Some of your professional development that you complete, it's not issued as PGPEI points. It's issued as CEU activities. Those activities may be counted, but please keep in mind that for 1 hour of participation, you get 1 PGPEI point. Okay, so what are PGPEI points and how do you complete it? So a PGPEI is Professional Growth Plan for Educational Interpreters, and that's where you record your PD or professional development activities for renewal of your educational interpreter permit. And that's where you upload supporting documentation. It's important that you talk to your administrator, principal. Some folks, it's a special education director that will be approving your PGPEI points. Points are entered for in 1 hour increments. So today's activities, some of them will only be half an hour increments. You'll have to combine 2 of those activities to complete 1 hour. And once you do that, in the description, you'll differentiate and indicate that you have uploaded and combined 2 half an hour activities to complete 1 hour. 1 hour, 60 minutes of PD equals 1 professional growth plan point. I can't express that enough. PGPEI tool is found using the link on the right hand side once you're in Elvis, and you click the link that says, I am an educational interpreter. Again, I mentioned earlier, if you are employed at an Indiana school or special education cooperative, please verify with your principal or that special ed director to determine if he or she requires you to upload documentation as you're entering in your professional growth plan points. Your PGPs will be submitted to your school if you're employed at an Indiana school. If you're not employed at an Indiana school or special education cooperative, then your PGPEI points will come to us for approval. And we do require an entry and a document verifying that entry for each one of your professional growth plan points. You'll upload the documents as you're entering in the points by clicking browse or files to upload. I believe it depends upon your server as to which one comes in. The bottom indicates, yes, you must upload documentation for every entry if our office is going to be approving that. So maintaining your permit is your responsibility. You can log into your Elvis account at any time to enter professional growth plan points. It is a workable document. You can log in, you can enter those, they do not go away. PGPEIs, once you start one, it will state that it's in process. Once you submit that PGPEI, you can no longer edit it. Once it gets approved, you can go in and look at it, but you can't do anything to that once you submit it, unless your principal or your special ed director returns that PGPEI to you for editing. excuse me, maybe they want additional documentation, or maybe there's a duplicate entry. Once you enter information into the professional growth plan, the only thing that you can do to that information is remove it and re-enter if you need to make a change to an entry. You cannot edit an entry that you've already put in. Keeping track of PGPEI points to be used for renewal is your responsibility. The PDP points, again, can be entered and saved into this tool at any time. Here's my contact information. You can email me if you have any questions. My phone number is 317-232-9007. I'm the secret agent of the Department of Education. I'd be happy to answer any questions if you want to call. The PGP evaluation, or complete the evaluation at the end of Laura's presentation, and that's how you'll get PGP points for our presentation today.
Answer. Okay.
Let me just stop sharing screen. Is that helpful?
Yeah.
Or do you want me to go back to, I can do that. Oh, looky there. We have lots of information.
I did have one question pop up in the chat box.
Okay.
Does this mean a TOD can serve as an interpreter without any interpreting qualification?
A teacher of the deaf? No. No. It means, so teachers that are certified with the endorsement, okay, this rule, let me repeat what this says, and I can share my screen again if you have additional questions. This rule does not apply to teachers with endorsements to teach deaf children unless the person is hired by a public or private school to work as an interpreter. So they have to, if they're hired to be an interpreter, they must get an educational interpreter permit. Does that answer the question?
Okay, I'm not seeing anything pop up saying that it does not, so
Okay.
Yes.
I see another question on there. The question with renewal. I'm currently not employed due to staying home with my children. I am continuing with my license. Perfect. So keep in mind, folks, that the Department of Education, we don't have any penalties if your license expires. So you staying home with your children can continue to get your professional growth plan points and enter them. And then when you get all of your points entered, you can submit your PGPEI to our office for approval. And then at that point, you'll go ahead and complete the application. So if it expires, it is considered valid until September 1. That's all licenses. There's no, there's nothing that changes in that. If you're not employed by prior to September 1, then your license will not be considered valid through that entire school year. So I don't know if that helps at all or not, Kaylin. I think we're good. Any issues of phone numbers? Okay. Yes to my question. The IIC license expires in okay. There's a difference between an IIC and an educational interpreter permit. So David, are we talking about specifically an IIC? That's different. The educational interpreter permits, there's no, educational interpreter permits are considered valid until September 1. That's specifically addressed in the Governor's Executive Order 20-16 when it talks about permits or licenses. So, all right, let's see, what else do we have? Okay, so DECA is not in our office. DECA does the IIC. She does not do educational interpreters. So there is a difference in the ruling in regards to that. Who enforces the EIPA 3.5 requirement? The 3.5 requirement is only for the original license. So in order to obtain your original license, most of you who are obtaining the professional development, you already have your license. So the EIPA written test and the EIPA 3.5 or higher on the skill test is not something that is required. You already have your license. So some of you came in from FSSA and then obtained your license and are continuing to do the PGPEI points to continue that certification. Okay. But when a school hires an interpreter, they do not have to have, if you have your EIP, if you have your educational interpreter permit, then you don't, I'm not exactly, is a school requiring you to show a 3.5 or higher on that to be hired as an educational interpreter? Sheila? But when is there any way to unmute Sheila so she could speak? Aha. Hi, Sheila.
Hi.
How are you?
Now, can you hear me?
I can.
My concern is that we still have many, I believe, educational interpreters who call themselves educational interpreters who have not ever achieved a 3.5 on their assessments. Why and how is it that they continue to serve as interpreters? I'm sorry, that may sound like I'm being a pretty hard-nosed individual, but I've been in this field for some 30 years. And one of the concerns has been that educational interpreters get put into those positions without having qualifications. So I'm wondering, oh man, I looked really gruff, didn't I?
You're okay.
Sorry.
I like Laura's presentation. She's got a background and or backdrop and everything. I might have to invest in that, Laura. So if an educational interpreter holds an educational interpreter permit, they, through the Department of Education, they're licensed as an educational interpreter, then they've met the requirements to obtain that license. Excuse me.
That's where I'd say, that's where I'm asking then, does the Department of Education oversee our school systems to be certain they are hiring qualified interpreters?
Okay, so
because
yes and no. Yes and no. Let me explain. So the licensing office where I work, I'm just going to make sure that the person meets the requirement to get the license. If they don't meet the requirement, I'm not going to give them the license. I'm not going to renew your educational interpreter permit. That being said, there's one other aspect of this. The Department of Education has an Office of Special Education. That office, if there's a complaint or it would fall on the aspects of, we don't go and monitor that I'm aware of. I don't know exactly what the special education office's requirements are. As far as going out to the school corporation, that I'm not certain that they do that unless there's a complaint or a hearing that's filed on behalf of a student, a deaf and hard of hearing student. Does that make sense? Go ahead, Laura. You have to unmute yourself. Can't hear you.
Okay. Can you
there we go. Yes.
Right.
Hi.
And Susie, let me know if I'm steering wrong.
Okay.
But the licensure requirement is a rule, and rules aren't like laws in that laws have governing bodies that enforce them. So the police watch out for people that are speeding or breaking the law, whereas a rule depends mostly on the complaint process. So an interpreter could be functioning, or someone could be functioning in the role of an interpreter in a school system, and if there isn't a complaint made and they don't have regarding their licensure, then there's no one going to each individual school to look for that. An additional complication that I see when I work with people in the state of Indiana is that we see people that are being hired with titles that don't say educational interpreter. They may be functioning as an interpreter would do, or assuming a lot of those roles, but they're not taking that title. So they bypass the need for an interpreter permit because that's not their job title, if that makes sense.
Well, and the other thing to keep in mind is back when educational interpreters first came to the Department of Education, there were emergency permits for educational interpreters, allowing them to get a permit to go into the classroom. That is no longer an option. That was removed a while back. So schools get into a situation now where they can't get someone in there on an emergency basis. And so sometimes they might hire someone, as Laura mentioned, to fill in and help, because there's really nothing else that they can do until that person continues to get their education, go do the EIPA requirement and the written test. So that is, it may not be the best option for a school corporation, but sometimes it's their only option. Go ahead, Sheila.
Well, I think we really have to be careful with that because we're going to be falling backward, I'm afraid. And Laura, I don't know, I've wondered sometimes if your agency needs to be the one that's doing a bit of policing, or at least a bit of encouragement, because most of us know that many of our families don't understand what a qualified interpreter is about. And I think we need to do a lot of education there so that they maybe can make the complaints, because as a peer working with someone who I know does not have qualifications, it's very hard for me as a peer to say, oh, I'm going to squeal on my colleague. Ooh, that doesn't feel good. But on the other hand, I know that students are not getting best practices, and we keep throwing out that term, when we continue to hire unqualified people.
Right.
Anyway. So I'm concerned about that. That's been going on way too long.
Yeah. Well, you can always, kind of steer them towards the Department of Education website, let them know what it takes to become properly licensed for those folks that may or may not. And there is an education license lookup, so you can look up someone to determine whether or not they actually hold an educational interpreter.
Why would I get licensed? Why would I get licensed? And I've even wondered for myself, now I happen to have a certification, RID, okay. So I keep on my points there, but why would I get licensed if I'm getting paid? It's a bother to go into the Elvis. I just think we somehow have to have a better incentive for people to want to be licensed. And we got to find what that incentive is going to be. And sometimes it's money, sometimes it's other things, prestige, I don't know. But I just really want to encourage us to figure out what those incentives are.
Okay. Okay. There's another question that I have regarding, isn't Boys Town who holds and provides test results? Yes, the EIPA results, it does come from Boys Town. And you indicate that you got a letter regarding the passing of the EIPA, but you didn't remember if you had to submit it to become licensed. If you were already licensed by FSSA and came to the Department of Education as a previously certified educational interpreter, you may not have had to have submitted the EIPA to us. There was an opportunity for those folks who held previous certification to extend their license for a period of time from FSSA. That expiration date just kind of extended. And then it was up to you to contact me so I could give you a license in our system. And then for you to go ahead and apply to renew that license every 2 years, like all educational interpreters should. And yes, seekers of new licenses must provide a high school diploma or higher, verification of either the of either EIPA written and the 3.5 on the skill, or the RID certification. So those are the options to obtain the educational interpreter permit at this point. All right, any other questions or anything that I can help anyone with?
Okay, Susie, I don't see any here.
Okay,
So,
all right. Well, Laura, Lisa's gonna monitor for questions, and I'm gonna bug out, and I hope you all have a most marvelous 4th of July.
have a good vacation. Thank you for sharing your time with us.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
All right, so we're going to turn this over to Laura now.
Okay, let's get, see if I can get my screen up here for you real quick. Not that. Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. I'm gonna. Not know what I've done here, but it is not the right selection. Let's go. Whatever I have hit has taken me away from. Can you see my presentation screen? Is that showing or no?
I can see the PowerPoint with, you know, the main slide and then a bunch of little slides next to it, not as a slideshow.
Okay, well, we'll just go with that then. You don't necessarily need to look at me while I present. It's probably a better thing. Let me get it onto slideshow. This looks so much easier when you're watching somebody else when you're in the audience than when you're trying to do it. All right. So I think I inherited my computer from Fred Flintstone. It operates a little bit more slowly than I'd like. You're not seeing the full screen, are you? Let's get out of here.
I don't see
Seeing
exactly
it, Laura. Yes, I'm seeing your full screen.
Okay. So my name is Laura Leffler, and I work for the Center for Deaf and Hard of Hearing Education. Was fortunate enough to join that team a little bit over, well, about a year and a half ago. My background is I started in deaf education. I was a teacher of the deaf for about 6 years when my husband and I started our family, and I was able to change my full-time job to mom. I went into interpreting and got my national certification because it was a good fit for me to earn some money outside of my husband's workday schedule, and spent about a decade in the video relay world and left that to come to the center. So I'm glad to be back to my roots in education, and hopefully you'll be able to glean a little bit of information from today's presentation. But here it is. First of all, we're going to be talking about your educational journey, and I'm going to have to do a little bit more background work here because this is bothering me that I can't see the full screen. Come here, you. What I would like you to do what I would like you to do is one thing that you have to do, right, when you're going on a journey is you have to look at where are you starting? and I want to know what your location is. So the first thing I'm going to ask you to do is we're going to have a little engagement activity. If you have a mobile device with you, please text L. Leffler, CDHHE, to 37607. I'm going to give you a moment to do that. It should allow you to join a poll everywhere link that will allow you to participate in some online polling so we can see what your answers are. Know that the polling that you're doing is not going to, none of your information, if you do text this number, it's not being sold anywhere. I'm not collecting it. No one's collecting it. It's basically an avenue to be able to look at some answers in real time as we work together as a group. So
Laura?
Yes.
I had a couple questions. They didn't get what you asked them to text and text to. Can you
Okay. So what you want to do is open up your text messaging. And the number you're going to text, which isn't a complete phone number, but you're going to text 37607, where you would normally put in your friend's phone number or your friend's name. Then in the message part, type in L. Leffler, CDHHE. It's on the screen here. And then hit send.
Can you say that one more time, please?
Sure. What you want to do is text in your, open up your Messenger app, and where you would normally put somebody's name or somebody's phone number, you're going to put the numbers 37607. And then we're going to have you type L. Leffler, CDHHE, and that will enable you to join this virtual online polling.
All caps?
I don't think it's case sensitive. Go ahead and you can do all caps just to see what happens. And if you aren't able to join it, that's okay too. Here we go. I'm going to just let you see kind of what the responses are that are coming in at the moment. I have a little music while you're answering. Oop, it's on play, of course.
Sorry, L. Leffler, and what was the rest?
Just L. Leffler, then C like Charlie, D like Delta, H like Hulu, H like Hulu, E like Echo. It's at the top of the screen.
I don't see it at the top of your screen.
Oh, okay. It's not on, are you still seeing the video share, or do you see the polling?
I'm seeing the Zoom.
Yeah, we don't see anything but that now, Laura. I put it into the text box.
I see it. CDHHE. Boom. All right.
Can you see it? A poll that says how many?
Laura, now
Yeah.
we can see it. We can see the results. I
Great.
started to see it now. I don't know what you did differently, but now we can see it.
All right, that's awesome. Well, so you can see currently from individuals that were able to respond, wow, I'm excited to see so many participants with some time behind them in the field, and also excited to see individuals that are just joining us in this fun world of educational interpreting. So that's what we're thinking about when we're thinking about what's your location when you start. The next question I'm going to ask you is how many, I'm going to bring back my poll, and we're going to ask, what's your job role or title? And there will be a, let me bring back my poll You'll be able to respond, what's your job role where you are currently? It's the same link. You don't have to text back in. You should have some, there we go. So this time you're going to answer, let me make this active. So what credentials do you have currently with in the field? And just keep in mind as we answer that I see 78% as a national certification. That might be because it's skewed. If there's 5 people that answer, we know that the numbers are going to look like, hey, if there's 2 people that have national certification, that there would be 40% of our community. But if you can answer, it would be, A would be some sign language instruction, B would be a 2-year degree in ASL. This is all, also it's completely anonymous, so don't worry about if you're answering what you're answering, nobody's gonna follow up and check and see what you currently have. So we have a good number of individuals with their national certification. I'm going to move on from this slide. So our goal, as we just learned from Susie, and as we also heard from Sheila, is our goal is that all of us are qualified interpreters, right? If that's the job that you're doing, regardless of the title that you've been assigned in your school system, your goal is to be qualified. And what does that mean? It means that you're able to interpret effectively, accurately, impartially, and that means receptively. That's understanding what the student is saying, as well as expressively. So being able to take whatever is being shared in the classroom and present that in American Sign Language using any necessary specialized vocabulary. That's our goal for all children, for all individuals who are functioning as interpreters in the classroom. And we talked about, Susie went into depth for us of your destination. What's your guidance? Well, the state of Indiana has a rule. And as I said, a rule is different than a law in that it doesn't have a governing body generally. And if it does have a governing body, then the penalties for violating it typically are less severe than laws. But this guidance applies to anybody who works in a public or private school in grades, preschool through secondary school in Indiana with a deaf or hard of hearing student and is hired as an interpreter or transliterator. So that includes anybody who's using American Sign Language, any code or method of communication used by the deaf or hard of hearing students. So that includes, but isn't limited to, cued speech, signed English, signing exact English, conceptually accurate signed English, or oral methods. Total communication, the whole gambit is included under our destination guidance that's been provided to us by the Division of Disability, Aging, and Rehabilitative Services. So let's try another poll. What I'd like for you to tell me, whoops, just one moment, go back. I want you to think about, when you think about professional development, how do you feel? I'm going to open up another polling question. Put it up on the screen. And this time you're going to be able to answer in a word rather than just selecting an option. if I can bring it up. Sorry, again, I did inherit Fred Flintstone's computer when I started working at the center. And sometimes the little mice inside are not wanting to cooperate with the speed that I want to work. Okay. So if you type your response to this question, should show up on our polling screen. Sorry. Oh wow. Yeah, internet is restarting. Just kick right off. Nice. Okay. I don't know if you can still hear me. I'm going to jump out of the meeting for a moment. I apologize for the technical issue. I think I've overextended what my computer wants to do at the moment. I will get in as soon as possible.
Thank you. I'm Arden Wiegand. I don't know if I've met you or not. I feel like I have seen you. We've all probably kind of seen each other at one place or another. If you don't mind, I'd like to go back for a moment when we were talking to Susie Langston. Do you mind if I ask you a question about that? Okay. Did you feel somewhat satisfied in the response about, I remembered when I passed my EIPA, I had a letter and it gave me a breakdown of those results. And when I applied, I think that I had to submit that, and now you do. So that would be at least reflecting a very bare minimum criteria for the educational interpreter. At least that person has passed the written requirement of the EIPA, hopefully other things as well. But at least there was that, because currently I know someone who had to go back and do the EIPA so that she could get her license through the DOE. And I realize that's not a optimal, but at least there is a minimum criteria that is being governed by the DOE.
I think that that's true now. I'm glad that that's happening. But I think what I'm concerned about is our school districts continue to hire people who don't have that 3.5. And I want us to be careful with our wording with the EIPA. It is not a pass-fail. Remember, it's that you got a score of 3.5, which says that I think 3.5 means that we get 60% roughly of the information out. So for Indiana to only require a 3.5 means that we're getting 60% of the information. To me, it's not a very high bar, but I do think it's at least something. Praise the Lord for that. It's at least something.
Right. And I agree with you. I don't remember anymore what the levels are, if it's a 1 through 5 or what, but yeah, I thought that 3 was the minimal, what is considered passing. So I may be wrong on that. I have to go back and see.
Well, and again, it's not passing. It's just basically, this is where your level is.
Right.
It's not pass failing.
You're exactly right. I think of that like,
I think
yes, you're exactly right. It isn't passing. That's true.
It's just what Indiana has decided is the
level of.
We're going to pick this one.
However, if you do not achieve at least a 3.5, you are not passing to be an interpreter, an educational interpreter by the Department of Education's criteria.
Yeah. Right.
And again, I agree with you. That's a pretty minimal criteria that we're talking about. This is my, I'm going to say 30th, about 30-something years involved in all of this. And I started back when the first provisions for evaluation were with Evelyn Thompson and the QA levels. Do you remember those? And do
I
you
do.
know Evelyn Thompson?
We go way back.
Oh yeah. So that was a lot of fun, yes. And I worked at the deaf school for 12 years when there was lots of infighting about how to proceed. And we certainly have made some big gains, but we still have so much to do. It's kind of frustrating.
Yeah. Hi,
Now,
Laura.
are you related to Myram?
My husband.
Ah, fabulous. Okay.
For the most part, fabulous, yes.
Yes. Wonderful. Okay, well, cool. I wonder if we're going to get back to our workshop or not.
Laura's back now, guys.
Hi, Laura. Sorry. I'll be quiet now.
Okay, and I've shared my screen. Can everyone see my screen? I can't see the chat room. I don't have it open up just yet. So I joined late on that bit of conversation, and I'm just going to guess on what we talked about before, that it was also at the heart of why do we have the diversity in ability levels for people who are functioning as sign language interpreters in the state of Indiana. And from my perspective, it's a very complicated issue. Now, first of all, I want to say that the Center for Deaf and Hard of Hearing Education, our task from the state of Indiana is to provide resources, training, guidance, and support to families and schools that serve children who are deaf and hard of hearing. So I know initially Sheila had said, well, you know, maybe the center could be an avenue for looking at schools and identifying schools that were hiring individuals who were less than qualified, or maybe were starting their journey but not yet at the point where they were able to provide that quality interpreting service for our deaf students. We are on, because we're intended to be supportive, we're intended to be guiding, we're intended to be a resource, it would be very dangerous for us to take on a policing role. I think that would make a lot of agencies back away from us, back away from the support that we can provide. So we take the avenue, number one, because we're not credentialed to be a policing body, but number two, our avenue is to address that need by doing things such as today, providing this training, providing the training that I provided last week. We had in the state of Indiana an educational interpreters task force. My opinion is that I would like to revive that, because I think that's going to be the avenue we need to take. When you look at people saying, well, why would I continue my credentialing? I feel like if you go into a school system and you have the same skills, training, and background as a teacher, then that is an avenue for advocating for pay that is, if that's your incentive, that's a way you can advocate for pay equivalent to that skills, training, and education. If you go in and your skills, training, and education is equivalent to a paraprofessional, or what we used to call teacher's aide, then the school systems are going to take that into account when they're identifying what your pay scale should be. It also alters how you are reporting in the organizational setup of the school, who you report to, based on whether or not you're an educational interpreter or you're a paraprofessional, and who is able to supervise you. So that's something I think we could discuss at length, and I would love to perhaps have that be the next topic for our Educational Interpreters Roundtable, or address it in a future Educational Interpreters Roundtable. But today I want to focus on what we have planned, so we can get through that and then maybe go through some more of your questions. So that being said, I'm going to forego any more of the online polling. I think that might have been part of the issue that I was experiencing. I'm going to stick just with the presentation. Are you all able to, somebody let me know if my shared screen is not showing up. But first of all, what you should do, oh, Sheila, yes. Did you have a comment? Oh, okay, thanks. First of all, if you haven't done this in a while, I would suggest this for every interpreter, is just self-reflect on where you are. Dawn, did you have a question? I can't hear you yet.
My question is, for the EIPA, I know for state of Indiana, it's all basically a sole thing about if they are ASL interpreters and English interpreters. If there is a 3.5 or higher tool that can, if I was preferred to do more of the Science Act English, and that's a choice you can do in your testing, but can you accept it? Can you go into that school as an ASL interpreter being assigned English interpreter, like as long as you have your 3.5 or higher?
My understanding is that as far as your educational interpreter permit, the state of Indiana is not making a distinction. The EIPA will come out with your assessment rating based on what preferences you picked going in.
Okay, so as long as I have my 3.5 or higher, that's all that matters.
That's what they're looking at for your permit.
Okay, okay. That's all I know. Thank you.
And as Sheila pointed out, the EIPA 3.5 or higher is actually on the lower level as far as what states typically are recommending. Forest, what a lot of the states that I've looked at are recommending, and it is considered, like RID, minimum level competency. It's not considered top level competency. It's not a pass-fail, it's an assessment, so it rates you on where you are and what you're doing now. All right, so we'll go back to identifying where you are. The state of Wisconsin has developed, and this is included in the resources that were submitted through schedule, a self-reflection tool. And I suggest if you are working in the school system that you take a look at this tool. It's lengthy, it's 10 pages, but it goes through all of the content areas that it was based on the EIPA. So it goes through the knowledge content areas as well as interpreting performance standards, where you can look at yourself or think about yourself and rate reflectively, how well do I know how to do this? How well am I doing this part? My suggestion in addition, if you have a cohort, a peer, a trusted friend that would be willing to fill one out for you on your behalf or about you, that's also a good reflective tool. Or if you're working with a teacher of the deaf or someone in the school system that could fill this out as well. It would be fascinating, I think, to find out what other peers perceive as your strengths and weaknesses. And this can help you, guide you as you're selecting educational resources, as you're looking towards training that you want to attend, and also as you develop a professional development plan, which we'll discuss a little bit later in this presentation. And I'm sorry, I'm getting behind with technical difficulties and so forth. All right, so this is an example of what that self-reflection tool looks like. For example, you could look at interpreter prosody, voice to signs. So I understand and apply stress and emphasis for important words and phrases while interpreting. Do you feel like very strongly confident in that, or uncertain, or so-so? This, I think, tool also will bring to mind refresh ideas. I don't know about you guys, but when I was, I failed to mention, but I was an educational interpreter in an elementary school setting for a year and a half. It was part of my professional journey when my youngest son was getting ready to enter kindergarten, my husband said that my get out of work free pass was expiring and I needed to find something to do with my time. And since he gave me a dog instead of another baby, so I had to go back to work, and was fortunate to be able to be in the educational setting at that time. But when you work in the trenches day to day, you're doing the same routines, you're with the same people, the same students. Sometimes it's easy to follow into kind of just a coasting or autopilot. So filling out something like this might make you rethink, am I emphasizing, you know, important phrases while I'm interpreting and allowing that to happen? And you can take this tool or a tool similar and draw the map of where you want to be. So this is a guidance document as well. It's an example that we developed of a professional development plan for educational interpreters. If you are working in the field as an educational interpreter, then you can work with whoever is supervising you to develop not only submitting to Elvis once a year what you're doing for your professional development points, but keep your own record and have your own skills or goals set and have somebody that's helping you stay accountable towards that. And again, I know the system is quite flawed. Educational interpreters, in my opinion, again, I'm preaching to the choir, but if you have the skills, background, and training of a teacher, you should be compensated that way. I can't make those changes throughout the school system other than educating, and like I said, perhaps through the Educational Interpreter Task Force making some leeway. But this is another tool that you can show an administrator, that you can show a teacher if they're considering your compensation for that year, for the next year, that you can say, look, this is the professional development I'm working on, this is what I've accomplished this year, so that they can see they're getting some value versus just you came to school, you're doing your thing, but now I have something. My mantra is if you look like a duck and you quack like a duck, they're going to believe you're a duck. And so educators and administrators believe in ongoing education, and they can really grasp something like this where you're saying, this is the professional development I've been working on for the past year, and this is what I've done, etc. I feel like one of the tools you can use while you're developing your own personal map, again, is the center. We're designed to serve throughout the state of Indiana. One of the initiatives that I have started working on is the educational interpreter roundtables that were set to occur in the spring, and then COVID came along. We had to nix them, and then we're able to provide some virtual training, which I hope to continue in the fall and continue on a regular basis until we're able to get together again. But outside of what I do, my role is accommodation specialist. My primary responsibility is to interpret and to arrange interpreting services for our staff. Outside of what I do, we've got just a fabulous team. We've got the leading experts in the field, in my opinion, in the state of Indiana, in educational audiology. Our assessment team includes a ASL fluent educational psychologist, an ASL fluent speech language pathologist. We have listening and spoken language specialists, visual language specialists that all can work together to assist you. We have an amazing deaf education team. The ladies that work full-time with us at the center are fabulous at just exploring options and being supportive for children that are in school environments. And we also have a robust early intervention team. So not only do we provide these trainings and these opportunities for you to participate, but I encourage you to reach out. If you have a singular situation, something unique, and you have a question, you can send that to me. You can send it to anyone on our team for a response. Know that we are HIPAA and FERPA compliant, so you don't have to give the details, not breaching confidentiality, but if you're looking for a particular resource or a particular strategy, then we're there. We also do on-site program evaluations and support in that manner. Also, I suggest you get connected with your fellow travelers. So we all started somewhere. We all started early in our education, early in our professional training. Sorry. Oh, one more. Don't be afraid to reach out. I, as a new person in my career, everybody recommended when I first got into interpreting, get involved. Be the person that takes out the trash because that's where you're going to have the conversations with the professionals that are organizing that workshop, that are doing the things. Join the, if you haven't, the Indiana Chapter of Registry of Interpreters for the Deaf. It's very reasonable. They've cut their membership costs in half this year to respect the impact that COVID has had on so many of us. But they offer training opportunities in all different varieties. And you may be thinking, well, I specialize in educational interpreting, but you know, a medical workshop would be great for you when you're interpreting biology or science or health or PE. Join the American Society for Deaf Children. You can sign up for free and get their new online newsletters and notifications when they offer events. Join the National Deaf Center. There's a wealth of information there, from training articles, information that you can pass on to other professionals, but also for your own self-development. And lastly, the National Association of Interpreters in Education. If you haven't joined them, they're free membership this year. You can't beat free. They offer workshops, they offer guidance documents, they have an entire publication that discusses educational interpreters A to Z that you could pull out as a resource to guide what your job description is, to provide information to other members of your team, to the teachers, to administrators. It's just an excellent community. And as I said, the benefits from NAIE are just incredible. I can't emphasize them. I don't think I can overemphasize them as a resource for educational interpreters. Okay, so we do have 10 minutes left, and I want you to be able to have some time to complete your evaluations. But I also wanted to open up again if there are questions. I do see Arden asked if we're located on the ISD campus. Yes, the Center for Deaf and Hard of Hearing Education is on the campus of the Indiana School for the Deaf. We're not a part of the Indiana School for the Deaf. A lot of people get that confused. They're our landlords. So it's great to be there with them because there's a lot of resources that we can share and learn from each other, but we're not technically a part of the Indiana School for the Deaf. We're under the Department of Health. They're under the Department of Education.
Laura?
Uh-huh.
Someone asked about the Wisconsin website for self-assessment. Can you give them that link again or give it to me to send out?
Yes, and it also is in on Sketch. When you pull that up, I believe the assessment is there, but if not, then the whole PowerPoint is there with the link. I'll pull it off right now and put it in the chat box. Oh. Are there other questions?
We did have somebody who asked what Elvis was as well.
Okay. Elvis is the educational license verification system and LVIS is the acronym, so everybody says Elvis. That is, okay, if you get your educational interpreter permit and you're required to maintain first of all, your permit would be noted there, but you also would have, let me move this box out of the way so that you can see that whole link populate. Yeah, there it is. The Elvis is also where you would document your PGPs and your you'd be able to record that you attended educational opportunities to maintain your permit. You can also use it to look up and see if other individuals.
Hi, Laura and Lisa. This is Mike. I had the begin code.
Oh, the beginning code was training.
And the ending one is what?
Mike, I'll be letting everybody know here in just a second.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I missed it. I'm sorry.
Are there other questions for Laura on what she was discussing, or? I don't see anything else, Laura. Did you?
Somebody asked if they don't have the Q code reader app, can they go back to Sketch and complete the evaluation?
Absolutely. In the chat box, there's also a link that will take you straight there.
I really appreciate all of you taking the time today. I apologize again for the technical difficulty that I experienced, and I feel like it was pretty rushed. I want to let you know that as far as the center is concerned, unfortunately, we don't have the capacity to do one-on-one mentoring with individual interpreters. So like, I don't have the ability at this time to ongoing work with an individual as they move through their professional journey. What we can do is support you, and we are working in tandem with a past project who does have mentoring opportunities, but we could, for example, if you needed assistance in one specific topic area, I could give you some help on that, or it's more just individual circumstance versus the ongoing mentoring.